You're listening to episode number 55 of the UpRev Ninja podcast, and this is your host, Tom Hudson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the UpRev Ninja podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for joining us. This show is produced each week with the single intent of discovering the tips, tricks, hacks, and lessons learned from our guests that has catapulted them into living the best version of themselves. Join your host, Tom Hudson, as he continues his search for the best methods to uprev his life. Now, let's dive into the show.
Matt Miller spent the first 9 years of his career as an Air Force pilot before entering the private sector to work in both the medical device and advertising industry. While a top performer in the corporate world, his long-term desire was to be his own boss. A good friend one day mentioned the gumball machines he and his young daughters owned, and that conversation began a 10-year business quest that has brought Matt's company, School Spirit Vending, to the cutting edge of both the vending and school fundraising industries. Today, School Spirit Vending's franchising program provides a proven and profitable business system for busy professionals and their families looking to develop secondary income streams with a limited time commitment. Hey, today on the UpRev Ninja podcast, I've got Matt Miller with me. How you doing today, Matt?
I am doing awesome, Tom. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, me too, man. The bio I read out to my audience is it's super interesting, and I'm really curious where we're going to head in with this. I think you touch on family, you touch on finances, you touch on moving out of that 9-to-5 kind of world, or supplementing it. There's a lot of different areas that we can go with, and I'm kind of intrigued where we're going to go with this. But before I just sit here and talk for an hour, why don't you tell us who you are and what you're all about and how you got to where you're at today?
So I'm a recovering Air Force pilot, recovering medical device and advertising executive who, through obviously a natural progression of things, became a vending machine operator.
You don't. I wouldn't think you would go from the fields that you were in to that. So how'd you do that? I don't see the clear career path, that trajectory.
Yeah, you know what? I don't either, and it was not planned, that's for sure. But, the reality is we all learn as we go. And I went to the Air Force Academy for college, literally because it was my one way to go to school away from home, because my parents were both teachers, and they told all four of us kids that if we wanted to go to college, we were going to have to figure it out on our own. And so the Air Force Academy was my ticket to a college education that was paid for away from home. I grew up in the Chicago area originally. And so I had no plans on being in the Air Force or the military. I had no family that had military background. It was an opportunity that came up, and it just happened that I had done really well in school and was a very well-rounded individual, which is what the academies look for. Once I got to the academy, I struggled through. I ended up going from being a big fish in a little pond to a little fish in a big pond, and was on academic probation half the time that I was there. But once I got to my junior year, they asked, what, is your plans? What do you want to do for a career path? And I found out that if I was medically qualified to fly and did not want to be a pilot, that I had to go talk to the 3-star general and tell him why I didn't want to be a pilot. And so I didn't want the FaceTime. Right. So I seriously, I became a pilot. It's the most ridiculous pilot story probably ever, but It's 100% true. And I ended up flying for 9 years. I was an Air Force instructor pilot for the first 5.5 years of my flying days. And then I flew the C-5 transport, which is the second largest airplane in the world, my last 3 years that I was in the service. Got a chance to travel the globe and go to some really cool places and do some really cool things. But I realized along the way that I didn't like being told what to do. Right. And the military just is not a very good place to be if you don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
So I jumped out as soon as my commitment was up.
I see what you did there.
World. What's that?
I see what you did there. You're a pilot and you jumped out. I'm sorry. Go on.
I jumped out without a parachute. That's the interesting part. But yeah, I did my time in the corporate world for about 12 years or so. And along the way, realized that the corporate world wasn't all it was cracked up to be either. And realized that I needed to do my own thing if I wanted to control my destiny and live the life that I really wanted to live. And so I started, because of a really, really bad, some decisions that were made corporately, found myself into a major hole financially. And that ended up leading me to start trying to figure this whole business thing out.
Wow.
And
go on.
So I, initially I was collecting aluminum cans. I was selling books on Amazon and Alibris and half.com back before selling on Amazon was cool. Did that for a while. I did read Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, though. And so everything that I was doing on the side, I was gauging against his whole idea of passive income and making money while you sleep. And none of those things, though they help pay the bills, were passive. And a good buddy from church one Sunday mentioned gumball machines that he and his young daughters had purchased and they had placed in businesses in the local area. And that spurred the whole idea of vending. I jumped into gumballs and candy and eventually got into stickers and temporary tattoos and toys and that type of thing. And that eventually led me to doing fundraising in schools with sticker machines, which is what we do today with school Spirit Vending.
Wow. So, I've had a couple of people on that were from the military, but you're absolutely right. That the military mindset, typically you don't see them going into entrepreneurship just because if they like being told what to do, entrepreneurship, it's like 180 degrees different. But you've got the discipline, you've got the consistency, you've got a lot of the attributes that you need to start the business, So I think, from a skill set, pretty much anyone from the military, they'd be awesome at this if they're willing to, make those decisions and move forward. So, so go back. You mentioned the financial hardship that you kind of ran into. Let's talk about that a bit.
So my first full year in the advertising world, I ended up being number 2 out of 750 sales reps in the country. I was at the right place at the right time. DirecTV and Dish Network were starting to do a lot of direct mail to grow their audience and subscriber bases. And it just so happened that I came upon a bunch of satellite dealers who had a lot of co-op money, who wanted to spend it to grow their satellite businesses. And so I went, top performer very quickly. Well, because of that, my boss, I think, thought that I got accolades a little too quickly. And she was also trying to ease the quota burden of everybody else in the office because she saw that I, had a long runway potentially with this satellite stuff.
Right.
And so after that year, she increased my quota. It was like 94%.
Wow.
Now the average quota increase in the office was 5 to 10%.
Okay.
Well, that coupled with several of my clients going out of business, sent me from being a hero to a zero overnight.
Right.
And it ended up costing my family about $60,000 the next year in commission and bonuses.
Wow.
And so we went from being in a pretty good place to being in a big hole. And I just had to look at the corporate comp plan to know that there was no way anytime soon I was going to be able to work my way out of that. And so that's where the whole entrepreneurship thing started, because I realized the only way I was going to be able to ultimately control things is if I took control.
Right.
With running a business. And so we just got busy trying to figure that out and tried a little bit of everything. I wasn't too prideful to try anything.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about, hey, I'm a former Air Force Academy Air Force pilot, I'm not going to do that. No, it was about, you know what, I don't care what I do. If it's legal and it's going to help me provide for my family, then I'm going to do it.
So, Matt, along those lines, so pride didn't hold you back, but did you have any, what did hold you back? What did you have to overcome to go down this path?
Well, first off, I had no clue what I was doing.
Okay.
And to be honest, I didn't have really anybody around me that was entrepreneurially minded. We had done some stuff in multi-level for a while. So I did have some, sphere of influence there, but nobody had any real world business experience that I was associated with. So I literally had to figure most of the stuff out on my own. Okay. And thankfully was willing to do some reading. I found a Yahoo group on vending, which helped me out in the early days. I just slowly but surely pieced this whole thing together and then was willing to go out, most importantly, and figure it out by taking action. And I made a lot of stupid mistakes along the way, paid a lot of stupid taxes, I would call it. But the reality is, eventually we figured it out. And, even though it was 25 cents at a time with a gumball to start with,
right.
The beauty was I didn't have to trade my corporate career for my side business. So I could do both and continue to pay the bills and provide for my family full-time during the day. And then nights and weekends, slowly start to put this vending thing together.
That's great. Yeah, I think having a side hustle is definitely important for many reasons. One that you just touched on earlier about how your comp plans were changed. So as you were going down this, you mentioned the Yahoo group and reading. Did you have any mentors along the way, or maybe after you got started, that kind of helped you out, that you got advice from, or were you solo, or with your family helping you out at this point?
One of my suppliers, and a guy by the name of Carl Morcati, ended up being a huge asset to me. Carl had been in the vending industry forever. And so I ran into him one day I was a customer of his, and that ended up giving me an opportunity to have conversations with him on the phone. And before long, we figured out that we were both kindred spirits in a lot of ways, and we're both forward and out of the box thinkers. And so he was able to help me out a lot in those early days, give me a lot of pointers and insights, and also to be a sounding board as I was figuring this whole school spirit vending thing out.
Yeah. So, let's kind of fast forward a bit, now, I guess, let's just stay there. You said you were doing this on evenings and weekends. How did you manage everything else in your life? The cooking, the cleaning, the oil changes, the family. You've got, your corporate job, and you've got this other job now, plus life itself. How did you manage that?
I was way out of balance.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest with you, Tom, it was being out of balance with intention.
Right.
To begin with, it was just survival. Yeah. Really. I mean, we got to a point where we got turned down for a payday loan. That's how bad it was.
Okay.
And you don't even need to have a credit rating for a payday loan.
Wow.
But over time, I realized as I started to see, okay, one vending machine would produce this much, two would produce this, three, et cetera, I could see how if I had enough of them,
yeah,
then I could take care of whatever financial challenges that we had. So I just got busy. I had to cash flow this thing as I had the money, because I only had $100 to start the business to begin with. And, but I knew and could map out, okay, if 10 machines provide this, if I have 50 machines, it should provide 5 times that.
Right.
And so then it was just a matter of me with laser-like focus going about finding the locations I needed to go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 50. And that's what I set out doing. And my wife understood, my kids understood. I tried to bring my kids along whenever I could, so that they could be a part of it and we could have some of that time together. It just wasn't fun time. It wasn't go to the bounce house or to the movies.
Right.
It's let's go help dad service tonight,
right,
or whatever. And so I got really creative, but I also had very, very little time to do anything else. Thankfully, my wife, Amy, held down the household, kept things going at home. We're a homeschool family, so she was teaching the kids as well as running the house. And so it was crazy there for a while. And I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. I was, like I said, way, way out of balance. But that was for a short period of time that eventually, because of the growth of the business, I didn't have to do anymore.
Well, I think, you said the key word earlier. It was with intention. And when you have that intent and it's communicated to your family, it's still bad, but it's not as bad. Like, you just didn't disappear and everyone's like, well, where did he go? So, that's definitely positive. I think, the fact that you brought your, family with you at times. It wasn't fun. You weren't at the bounce house, like you said, but, I think they're learning life skills and, seeing that commitment and just the creativity that you brought. So they probably got to see a side of you that they probably didn't get to see they didn't get to see that side of you at home. So I think that's probably a positive thing for them to witness. So
well, thankfully our kids, have been a part of all that we do since the very beginning. We look at every experience as a learning experience for them, especially as a homeschool family. We kind of look at education a little differently than many. And so we looked at it as a positive. Now, what's cool today is the entrepreneurship and the day-to-day and the work ethic that my kids have been exposed to now for many years of their life has equated to some pretty cool things. My oldest son is a junior in college at Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan. My daughter, Sarah, is a sophomore at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Zane was our very first graphic designer for School Spirit Vending at 10 years old.
Wow. Okay.
He's now 21. He's been in the graphic design field for 11 years, has done thousands of jobs for hundreds of clients, initially in support of our business team, but over time has gone out on his own and done a lot of other work. He now does app design and web design as well. His sister, Sarah, is an accomplished artist. She started her own company here this last summer and is also helping launch another company. It's called Alex and Tay, and it's essentially taking Sherwin-Williams, where you can pick the different paint colors that you want, and taking that to nail polish, and literally they can match up to 15 million different colors. Where you just take a picture with your phone and they can match that color, and within a couple of weeks send you a bottle of nail polish that matches, that dress or that outfit or your kid's eyes or whatever. She's helping on the social media side of things. It's one of the ambassadors because of some of the relation we have. So, here they are. She's 19, Zane's 21. And for them to have that kind of experience and exposure already, I didn't start my first business until I was in my late 20s. I didn't start SSV till I was 40.
Right.
So it's pretty cool to see them and our youngest Rebecca as well, all three thriving and benefiting from the exposure that they've had growing up.
That's great. Yeah. So obviously those life lessons have paid huge dividends to them and your family. That's awesome. So I guess, once you got the train back on the rails, right, and you got out of that financial hole that you were in, things were going smoothly. What did you do then to just maintain harmony, make sure that you didn't fall down, just kind of what was your path to be stable and continue growing?
Well, initially my goal was to get free from my job.
Yeah.
And my definition of success is having control of time and money.
Yep.
And so as we got more control over money, then eventually I was able to get control over time. And January of 11, which is just shy of 7 years ago, I was able to walk away from my full-time job in the advertising business. We bought our first house at that time. We moved to Central Texas. I call it EIEIO. We've got about 6 acres. We raise animals. We've got a huge garden. We strive towards becoming, living as sustainably as we can, and providing as much for ourselves as we can along the way. Of course, that provided a lot of life lessons for the kids as well. Once I accomplished that, though, to be honest, I got a little stagnant.
Yeah.
Got a little bored, started taking naps in the afternoon and that type of thing. And right around that time, I realized that our team had kind of slowed down as well.
Okay.
And I had heard somebody say at one point, the speed of the group is determined by the speed of the leader. And at that point in time, I realized I needed to get out, get myself around people that made me uncomfortable, and just start feeding my mind again and thinking bigger and being challenged by others. So I started attending conferences, went to a couple of different Seth Godin events, went to a couple of Dave Ramsey events. And at one of those events, I ran into a guy by the name of Aaron Walker, who was a good friend of Dave Ramsey's, and actually was one of the first advertising clients Dave had back on the radio 20 years ago. Aaron has been in business for 35 plus years, bought and sold 8 or 10 different companies during that period of time, multi-millionaire. And I met him at one of those events, and I realized that I needed to get around him.
Right.
And so eventually I convinced him into letting me hire him as a coach. And a little over 3 years ago, we began that process. And it was him pouring himself into my life on a weekly basis and looking objectively at what I was doing and my thought process and that, which changed everything for me. Because I had somebody who had a completely different experience, completely different background, looking at what I was doing, encouraging when needed, but also questioning some of my thought process and challenging me on a lot of things to help me understand and move forward.
So, yeah, no, and I think it's good, to have, obviously, I'm a huge fan of, coaching, but it's also really good, I think, to have someone outside of your industry or your business, because they see it from a completely different perspective. So over the last 3 years, what kind of, processes have you put into place now, or, personal habits that you have that help you grow as an individual as well as your business and, maintain, that close, tight family that you have?
One thing is living by a calendar. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of the things, Tom, that I pushed back on Aaron for almost a year.
Yeah.
Because I liked having the freedom. I liked not being tied down because I had been for so long. And finally, he was like, dude, do you have any idea how much time you're wasting and how unproductive you're being by not scheduling? He said, if you want freedom, schedule that into your calendar.
Right.
He said, but otherwise, start living by a calendar. And that has made all the difference, because it allows me to have more control over my life. It allows me to have that family time and for us to get up and go and do the things that we want to do when we can. But it also gives us the opportunity to be very, very productive and take advantage of the time when I am working. I typically try to take Thursday, Friday off these days. So try to get as much done as I can Monday through Wednesday.
Right.
And I'm able to do that because of the whole calendar. That's the big thing. Another thing that I've learned how to do is batch things as much as possible. I'm a podcaster just like you are. And as an example, one of my shows, it's called Sowing Seed. And I batched 10 episodes of Sowing Seed on Saturday over a couple of hours, and took care of, several, 3 weeks worth of content, almost 4 weeks worth of content by doing that. Then I sent it off to folks that do the editing and do the show notes and all that. And then I'm able to get on and do some other things, knowing that I'm ahead of the game instead of, waiting to the last minute.
Right. Yeah. And I do the exact same thing. I usually spend one Sunday a month doing everything for the upcoming month. So I've got December done. It's all done in the can, and I'm waiting on January now. With the holidays coming up, I've got a lot of extra time. I'll probably do like January and February. So, and being in New England, I'll be a couple of snowstorms. I'm sure I'll lose power, so it might be good to get a few extras in the can.
Well, it's, there's peace of mind when you can do that. And, I hate being under deadline. I hate being under pressure. I hate all that. So I've just learned if I just focus and batch stuff, I can get a ton done, get myself ahead. With my other show, School Zone, I've already got through April's content done. Now it's just a weekly show, so it's not as much content as my Sowing Seed show, but still, it's really comforting to know that I'm that far out.
Yeah.
And it allows me to take the interviews that I do as they come in, instead of, holy smokes, I got to get 4 done in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
So.
I don't want to go on a tangent too far, but when I started this podcast, that was my chief concern, was about having enough people to interview. And that has turned out to be the smallest of the issues that I've had. So, yeah. But regardless, so what are you working on now? I mean, you've got the calendar thing, you've learned batching. What part of your life are you trying to get to that next level right now?
My biggest struggle right now is in the health arena. I've wrestled with my weight for decades. And, once again, a lot of success in life is just knowing yourself and understanding yourself and auditing what you're good at and what you're not good at. And whereas I can discipline myself to go to work every day and discipline myself for a lot of things, when it comes to eating and when it comes to exercise, those are both things that I've always had a challenge with. And so once again, the whole coach idea, in this case, I hired a guy by the name of Jeff McMahon, who has a company called Total Body Construction. Jeff is the personal trainer for guys like Pat Flynn and John Lee Dumas.
Oh yeah.
And actually Pat Flynn was the one that turned me on to Jeff a couple of years ago. But I work out with him using Zoom, just like you and I are using Zoom now, on a weekly basis. And then he sends me workouts. Otherwise, he's in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm in Central Texas. And he's able to help me stay focused, be accountable, and that type of thing. Because I just know that's a weakness of mine.
Yeah. No, and I think, again, it's amazing if you take a step back how many coaches you can have in your life. Like you've got your fitness coach, you have your business coach, you've got your the biggest coach of all is your wife. Just all these different people that can be influencers to yourself. So, well, So I guess just kind of, moving towards some of the wrap-up questions here, Matt, let's say there's a person out there walking a day and this is the first time they've heard this podcast and they're like, wow, you've gone through a lot here. You've gone from, this corporate, you've flew for the Air Force, you've got this wonderful education and, but now I don't want to say you work from home, but you've got the luxury of being your own boss and, kind of setting your own calendar and schedule. That sounds kind of daunting for a lot of people. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Number one, ease into it. And for a while, you need to be burning the candle at both ends like I did. My vending thing was a side hustle long before it became a full-time deal that I do on a part-time basis. I started the School Zone podcast 2.5 years ago on the side, and now it's grown into a reproducing entity for our family. I just started the Sowing Seed podcast here a month ago. So It's doing things in stages, and it's easing yourself into things and taking things one step at a time. One thing that I've been really, really, really good at is, okay, this is where I want to be, but then not judging myself and how quickly I get there, and just being happy with making small steps every day or every week towards that goal. I realize Sowing Seed is probably going to be a 2 to 3 year project before it really yields what I hope it to yield. Right. But in order for me to get there, I got to start. So I launched. The website's not perfect right now. There's a lot of things I have in my mind that it's going to become, but I'm willing to release a minimum viable product, realizing that it will become closer to perfection over time. Too many people are getting ready to get ready.
Right.
Instead of launching. And guys, here's a news flash. What you think your business is going to be 6 months or a year from now is going to be completely different than what you have in your mind. And the only way you're going to know what it's meant to be is if you get in the game, get busy, and figure it out as you go. Because the market is going to dictate, and you can't predict that.
I completely agree. I've been watching a lot of videos and reading a lot of literature on branding, and it's the customer dictates what your brand is. If you don't like what the customer's coming up with, then that's to change that culture or that thought process is so difficult. So yeah, like I put this product out and like, oh, that's how they see me, and then you kind of have to go down that path. So, I'm going to put all this stuff in the show notes, Matt, but, what's the best way to connect with you? I've got a ton of links, but, for people that are just listening to this in the car, what's the best way to connect out with you?
So I recently published a short ebook called Live Your Dreams, the Top 10 Reasons Why You Need to Own a Vending Business. And for anybody in your audience, the best way to reach me is to go to ssvbusiness.com/ninja. And we've got a landing page just for your audience where they can go there. They can download that ebook for free and find out some of the basics of vending and why, as a professional, they might want to look into vending on the side like I did. If they want to talk about the franchise, then, of course, we can begin a dialogue there. We are a franchise today. We've got 108 or 109 franchisees in about 39 states. We teach people how to raise money for schools using our sticker vending program. And so anyway, they can go get a bunch more information on that. We can start a dialogue. Otherwise, if they just want to learn more about vending, I recently published a course called Vending Secrets to Passive Income that can be found at vendingsecrets.net. And it's actually an encapsulation of my 13 years of experience in the vending industry. It's at least a couple year head start for anybody who chooses to take the course. And it helps demystify a lot of the basics of vending and get people off to a really, really strong start.
Okay. Wow. That's great. Thank you so much for that. So I guess just the final question here, Matt. Is there anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to bring up? I've got a couple of questions for you, but I'll save them for after the show.
Tom, the biggest thing I would tell folks, the one thing that I have done right, and I have done a lot of stupid stuff along the way.
We all have.
I've failed a lot. I've paid a lot of stupid tax. Okay.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've done right is get in the action mode. 2.5 years ago, I decided I wanted to be a podcaster. I knew nothing about podcasts. The only show I had ever listened to was something called the Coop Cast. It was by a couple that raised chickens.
Okay.
And I decided to become a podcaster. I found the best way to do that. I took a course, and within 30 days, I had released my first episode. It wasn't perfect. I haven't listened, but I should go back and listen. I'm sure it was pathetic. But you know what? I got started.
Right.
Here I am today, hundreds of episodes in the can on the 4 shows that I do. And it's not that big a deal, but back then it was. So don't be afraid. Don't take yourself too seriously. Nobody's paying attention really anyway to begin with. And people expect that you're going to get better over time. So just realize that. Don't be too overly critical of yourself. Publish it, launch it, figure it out, and you'll have a success story to tell soon. Awesome.
Well, hey, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I mean, I'll just leave it at there. So, thank you so much, Matt, for coming on and, sharing your story with us and sharing your wisdom and for being a great guest.
Yeah. Thanks again, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, and God bless you, man.
There's a lot of awesome takeaways here with Matt. Talks about going from small town, parents who are both in education, basically made him and his siblings, find their own way into college. And, Matt chose military, which he quickly found out wasn't necessarily for him. Then he dove into the corporate world. Then he got into entrepreneurship. But, the common theme I heard during the show was it was all about mentoring and coaching, getting people to push him out of his comfort zone and to make sure that he didn't become stagnant and doing the same thing over and over. And, so just really, understanding, having those people in your life to help him. And the other piece I really liked was when I asked about how did he balance it all, he said he didn't. He said he had a very unbalanced life, but he did that with intention. And, intention is very important. And I thought that was great. So those were my key takeaways. What were yours?
Thanks for listening to the UpRev Ninja podcast with your host, Tom Hudson. Navigate to our website at uprev.ninja today, where you will find additional resources to help you discover the best version of you. While you're there, join our newsletter and join the discussion on your favorite social media platforms. We've got some awesome guests lined up to share with us how they are becoming the best versions of themselves. Again, thank you for listening. Now it's time to go out and UpRev your life.